Today I'm going to be making salsa beef and roasted butternut squash. It's a very simple recipe. It needs very few ingredients, really flavorful and really healthy. So you're going to need ground beef, some butternut squash, whatever your favorite salsa is. I'm using coconut oil. You can use whatever kind of oil you want. Pepper and salt to season the squash while it's roasting. Garlic to season the squash while it's roasting. And I like cilantro, so I'm going to put a little bit more on the end just to finish it. If you buy your butternut squash already cut and cubed, you've saved yourself a whole bunch of time. But since I bought mine whole, I'm going to go ahead and prepare these and then we can get started. So I finished chopping up my butternut squash. They're roughly 1-inch cubes, give or take. It's kind of a weird shape, so whatever happens, happens. And I melted some coconut oil in the microwave and just stirred my garlic right into it. It makes it a little bit easier, in my opinion, to spread all over the butternut squash. So I'm going to just pour it in there and then we're going to toss it. I'm going to go ahead and add some salt and some pepper. And I'm going to go ahead and toss that and then throw it onto the roasting pans. I'm just using cookie sheets, but it'll work. And then we'll throw it in the oven. So I've got my squash all seasoned and in as much of a single layer as I could get on these pans. You want them to cook evenly. So I'm going to throw them in an oven I preheated to 400 degrees. And I'm going to set my timer for 15 minutes and then I'm going to flip them and set them for another 15 minutes. So half an hour in total, and they should be fork tender and ready to eat. And while these are roasting, I'm going to get my ground beef going. So I've got a few minutes left on the timer before I have to flip the butternut squash in the oven, and I'm just frying down my ground beef. You can see a lot of water's coming out of it. That's not a big deal. I did not put any extra oil into the pan before I started frying it. I'm using a non-stick pan, so it's not going to be an issue. Once it is dried down and all this water's not in there anymore, you can either drain out the extra oil that's going to be there or not. That's your choice. I've drained it. I've not drained it. It doesn't really matter. While it's cooking, if you want some extra seasoning, you can season it with some onions and some garlic. You can use onion powder or garlic powder. I've done that. Today I'm not doing anything extra to it because the salsa I'm going to add has enough flavor on its own. So I'm just going to continue drying this down and then we'll turn this thing back on when I'm ready for the next step. So the ground beef is done frying. You see pretty much all the water's out. There's just a little bit of the fat from the beef in the bottom of the pan. I do use like lean ground beef or extra lean ground beef, whatever it is. So it's not a crazy amount, so I'm not worried about draining it. But again, if you want to drain it, that's entirely up to you. I'm going to go ahead and add my salsa in. And typical Jen style, I'm not measuring anything. Jack's Cantina salsa really is good. Super flavorful. If you don't like cilantro, you won't like it. I like cilantro. My boys like it, so not an issue here. So I'm going to cook this a little bit longer and get some of the liquid from the salsa to evaporate. And then the beef is pretty much done. And I'm still waiting another 14 minutes for the butternut squash to finish in the oven. And then we will have dinner. So the squash is done cooking. It smells amazing in here. You'll know that it's done when you can poke a fork in it and it's nice and soft. So I'm going to take this out of the oven and we're going to plate everything up. And here's the finished product. Roasted butternut squash with simple salsa beef. Enjoy!